So our first presentation, we're going to talk about, and even T mentioned that he is an accidental project manager. So uh, April and I are going to introduce ourselves, and we're going to start talking about what an accidental project manager is. And this may be quite a few people that are already here, or if you're listening to this, how did you jump into the career? How did you even possibly um, think about becoming a project manager? So for the first thing we want to do is go ahead and ask this question in the chat. Um, I I I'm also I teach project management at a local college, and one of the things that I do tell my students when they start talking about being afraid of project management or can it be difficult? A lot of things we do in our life are projects. So like organizing family events, maybe coordinating a work team initiatives, uh, planning vacations, dinner parties, birthday parties, whatever it is. You if you're these are things that you may be already living what we call the project manager life. So what we want to ask as we go through, and give you some time to think about it as we're starting to talk and we're introducing ourselves, are what is one project that you've led without realizing it was a project? And we ask that you just go ahead and drop these in the chat because these help other people too. Not everybody thinks of things as projects, uh, but they can be. So while you're thinking and while you're going and entering these into chats, we're going to let April go ahead and introduce herself, and then I'll come back and do a little bit more and tell you how we became who we are today.
Hi, everybody. Well, in my case, just for the icebreaker earlier, in my case, one of the biggest projects I managed without even calling it a project was planning my family event, which is a very personal one, my own wedding. I had to coordinate with multiple vendors, manage a budget, keep track of schedules, and make sure everyone was aligned on expectations. And at the time, I thought I was just being the planner in the family, but looking back, I was practicing for project management. I did not know that it was scope, cost, schedule, and even stakeholder management at that time. So the reason why we love asking that questions is because we wanted to reflect, or because when we reflect on our lives, we realize that we've been doing project management long before we ever attach a title to it. So at least we're looking very much ahead on your comments and your experiences and stories on how your foundation in project management started. Not to introduce myself, well, my name is April, and my path was unconventional. I began my career as a TV and radio reporter, where every story back then for me was considered as a project. From scouting locations to coordinating with local officials and editing under pressure, I was already practicing scope, schedule, and communication management. Then came up my entrepreneurial journey as a co-founder of Like a Motorcycle. This is a Philippine-focused startup on manufacturing electric vehicles, where we in project management, it was really unavoidable. We had to plan R&D initiatives, coordinate suppliers, manage risks around manufacturing delays, and communicate with investors. We also balance innovation with compliance and safety standards. This being said, it essentially is quality management under PMBOK. That experience sharpened my skills in stakeholder management, integration, and risk planning. At the same time, I've also had the privilege to work with PMO advisory. Of course, this is being led by Dr. Tiwu. Here, I expanded my exposure to project management practices, helping organize professional summits, supporting training initiatives, and engaging with project managers across different industries. This gave me insights into certifications like PMP, PGMP, and PFMP, and how professionals around the world are building careers into project, program, and portfolio management. On the personal side, which is the lighter side, I think as the eldest daughter, I became the family planner. That is, I think, very innate to eldest children, or at least the eldest child. Birthdays, weddings, renovations. These taught me about resource planning, vendor management, and even contingency planning. Now, academically, pursuing my MBA in innovation management and certifications in Six Sigma and Scrum gave me the formal framework to back up what I was already doing. That's when I realized project management isn't really just a skill set, it was a career path that I'd been preparing myself all along. So I think for the next slide, I'll be turning over to Anthony to formally introduce himself to us as well.
Oh, thank you. Again, Anthony Pavelich. I also became this non-traditional path to project management. I'm going to talk about my life outside of work after I talk about the other two, because just like I said in the introduction, is a lot of times we don't realize what we're doing. Um, my career goes back a long time, but I think when I first started realize, when I think about how I started doing projects, it goes back to my time at Bank of America. I started working there, and well, actually I started working for a company called Bank Four. And within 3 months, it was Bank Four, Boatman's, Nations Bank, and then Bank of America. There were so many mergers. So part of what happened is after we became, the Nations Bank and then to Bank of America, it we moved to a new location. And at that point, I started being pulled into meetings about how to revamp the training, how was your, and started working on these different. I just thought they were, meetings at the time, but you later realize, oh, these are projects. Again, that's why I'm going to talk about outside of work afterwards. So it was then that I realized now, because of who I am in my career, that these were actually projects. Now, was I leading? No, at that point, I was just what they probably you'd call subject matter expert because I had gone through the training. I was a team lead, so I had the experience within the call center to understand what we needed for training. Um, and then after I left there, I went into Bombardier again. Uh, we were working in the repair department. We were where we did quotes. We managed the repair of items coming in for planes, and again pulled into meetings to, well, how do we do our pricing? How do we communicate this to the customer? Again, realizing later these were projects, not thinking about it. And then started working ag- again at UPS Supply Chain Solutions. But before it was that, I actually started when it was called Menlo Expedite. There was a company called Menlo Worldwide, Menlo Expedite, to where we did a lot and basically transportation, expediting transportation of packages and equipment. And then UPS bought them. And same thing, you know, we need to change our phone systems. We need to change how we train. And again, pulled into all these meetings. And that's when I started to really realize when I was at UPS, these are projects. I am being involved in projects. My role were my as a supervisor of quality and training at UPS, my role was more than it was being just an attendee. I started running meetings, I started doing things, and I'm like, okay, these are projects. I had already had my MBA, or not my MBA, but my uh, bachelor's degree from Wichita State University at that point. And I'm one of those people that I thought, okay, I'm done learning. I don't want to go to school anymore. But when I realized what I was doing and I realized what projects were, I got a mentor and I'm like, okay, I want to go further. I want to know more about this project stuff. So I'm going to go back to school. And at that time, you could have gotten a master in project management or an MBA with a concentration. So talking to my mentor, they're like, it's better to do an MBA with a concentration because it's more usable. It's more flexible. So that's what I did. I went back to Keller, Graduate School of Management. I got my MBA with a concentration in project management. Uh, Life changed. I started working at Department of Energy, doing projects and project. I was a project. They call them project officers. And we'll talk about titles in a little bit. But I did project management at the Department of Energy before I ended up getting married to a Canadian and I moved up to Canada. And then from there, I was like, okay, I want to keep going. And we talk about certifications and we talk about experience. And I went ahead because those letters, we all know they, even if you have the experience, sometimes having that certification means more to organizations. And also it helps you stay at top of what's going on in the field. So I got my PMP. I later realized, I will tell you, I was not an early adopter of Agile because I like to know what we're doing when. So I was always about the traditional waterfall version. As I started working with Agile, I'm like, ooh, I like this. This makes sense in some areas. I went back and got my Agile certification. But then looking back at my life outside of work, I realized I was a project manager at heart the whole time. Just like April, I was a planner, vacations, family things. And if you think about it, and we'll talk about it when we talk about your resume, you can relate all these things to your work and to your career. So I bought it when we bought, I've bought houses in in the house I have now, bought in 10 years ago. I did a project plan. It's like, when do I need the air ducts cleaned? When do I need the electrical done? These are things that, I did outside of work that I know that this is who I am. This is what I do. So even if you don't start out in projects and you don't think, hey, this is where I'm going, or this is what I want, we can look at how did we get here? And sometimes it's not the most direct route. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide.
All right. So thank you for sharing that, Anthony, sharing that with us. So I guess what we're trying to say is that, or communicate with everybody, is that when we talk about project management, many people picture formal certifications, large organizations, or traditional project roles. But in reality, many of us fall into project management without ever intending to. That's why we call it being an accidental project manager. And to what has Anthony shared with us, being a project manager has a funny way of finding us. Even if we didn't actively seek it out, many of us had this moments where we become the person everyone turn into when something is needed to get done. Whether that was launching a campaign, organizing an event, or leading a new initiative. I guess that's the essence of the accidental project manager. Someone who really steps into leadership and delivery, not because of a formal title, but because circumstances and sometimes it's the necessity that pushed them into the role. So today, beyond the job title, where does our project skills truly begin? We've tried to classify this into three categories, wherein there's personal projects, real work, and community and academic. So project management isn't always tied to a job title. The skills actually begin in real life. So when we talk about it in real work, organizing charity events might already mean you're managing a scope and budget, coordinating with stakeholders, and ensuring deliverables. Informal project management term, that's integration and stakeholder management. If you use spreadsheet to track donation and timelines, then that's already a simplified version of a project dashboard. So when it comes to personal projects, planning a wedding, like I did, involves timeline management, vendor coordination, and risk mitigation, just like a formal project. So tools like MS Project or Smartsheet would visualize your Gantt chart, but even a calendar with dependencies will work the same way. When it comes to community and academic, leading group projects or organizations sharpens skills like in team leadership, communications, and schedule management. So tools like Trello, Asana, or Jira help manage tasks. But at the core, you're practicing work breakdown structure, risk management, and change control. So the technical side is already embedded. You're defining requirements, setting milestones, managing vendors, and keeping stakeholders aligned. So the only difference is whether you formalize it with frameworks and tools. So I guess that's where our project management skills truly begin. So are you a project manager without actually realizing it? What do you think, Anthony?
I do. I think that's the thing is I think we all, that's what happens is that you realize, and that's what I was trying to explain, with my career progression is that when you start looking at what you're doing and then you realize you don't always have words for it. And it's like you were just saying about, the scope control and vendor engagement and communication. You don't always have the terminology to put to what you're doing. And I think that's part of what becoming a project, doing the training and looking at certifications, looking at this career allows you to do. It allows you to finally put words to what you're doing and realize I have been doing this all along.
Absolutely. So definitely, you are a project manager without you even realizing it. When you're someone who organizes, leads, and delivers projects without ever holding the title, you suddenly become the go-to person or the one who brings order to chaos. So I think that's the beauty of it. From a PMBOK perspective, you're already practicing integration management if you're pulling together people, tasks, and goals, risk management when you're already anticipating issues and creating contingency plans even informally, communication management when you're providing updates, sometimes through simple tools like group chats or emails, and scope and quality management when you're already ensuring what gets delivered matches the actual expectations. So let me give you some practical examples. So if you're coming from a marketing background and you're a marketing coordinator, you're tracking campaigns in Google Sheets, you're already doing project tracking. So in a project management environment, we'd probably use MS Project or Smartsheet. So if that was the case. If you're a nonprofit organizer and you're updating volunteers via email, that's already doing stakeholder communication. So a project manager would formalize it into a RACI matrix or a communications plan. And lastly, if you're a startup founder or co-founder like me, well, monitoring production delays is essentially managing risk register, documenting issues, assessing probability, impact, and planning mitigations. So the key is to actually recognizing that these aren't just casual activities. They really align with the technical competencies of professional project management. So I think which part of the description resonates most with your current experience. You can also drop down your comments or questions in the chat below. So we'll try to get back to it later after our presentation. So moving on to the next slide, what are the signs that you're already doing project management? So that I'll turn over to Anthony.
Great. Thank you. So these are things that we've already kind of talked about, that you're setting and tracking deadlines. So they can be one of the questions, and we're going to talk about resume, but one of the questions that came through in the very beginning was, um, I'm looking to transition, I'm redoing my resume. Do I change my job titles to to talk about being a project manager? Uh, the answer to that question is I would say no. You don't change your job title, because as a project manager, even when we become a certified PMP, we have a set of standards and that we have to uphold to, integrity standards that the PMI sets. And we don't want to have you say, "Hey, I was a project manager." Somebody do a job, job verification, and I know they weren't a project manager. But what you do realize that you think about, what we want you to understand is that when you're doing descriptions and when you're thinking about your job, do you set and track deadlines? These are things that you can talk about in the description. Um, so do you break down the the complex parts of the job into more manageable tasks and set out the deadlines for those things so you can make sure that you're on track? And that goes along with coordinating across teams, because once we have those deadlines, once we have those tasks broken down, who's going to be responsible for it? Who do you need to do those? Are there things that you need other people to accomplish? Are there parts of those tasks that need to be done before you can do it? So we start looking at, um, what are the prerequisites, or what are the dependencies on me doing my work? So again, we can use these terms. You're starting to get terms for what you do. Um, communication. You have to communicate what you need. You communicate across to everybody. What do you need to succeed? What do you need? What do you need to have done? And these all are identifying and managing risks. So like April said, starting out, when you start out a company, I mean, when I started my own consulting business, you start thinking ahead. You have, what are the potential issues I could have? If this happens, what do I need to do? So risks, and risks don't always come true, and we know that, but you plan for them. You think ahead. What could happen, and what would my response be? When we don't plan ahead, that's when we run into issues. Delivered scoped outcomes. So you know what you want to do, you know what you want to accomplish. How do we ensure we do that without getting off track? And if you do that, if you think that way, you're already doing project management. You're trying to deliver the results. You may not have the title of a project manager. One thing I try to tell people is don't get stuck on titles. If you Every organization or sets the word I'm looking for is lost to me right now, but they set their organization up in different ways. So, you have the hierarchy set up in different ways. You have your org chart set up differently. Um, and project managers, and depending on the size of the organization, there may never be a full-time project manager. So nobody ever may have that title of project manager. Or one company may call it a project manager, where one company calls it a project officer, or a project lead. So you don't get stuck on titles. The important thing is your skills. What are you doing? And to be able to translate those skills into actual manageable and descriptive uh, tasks and descriptive responsibilities. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So when we think about your resume and interviews, and there's a question that just came in the chat a couple of minutes ago, highlighting the difference between roles and responsibilities. Um, that part of it, this is perfect, because what your job title is does not always equate and have an equal layout to what your roles and responsibilities are. So it's important before, when you like this, as an example here, is ran a social media campaign for product launches. That's generic description. When you use the language of project manager, which is what, and we talked about AI. We know a lot of organizations now use AI to scan resumes for keywords before you move forward. And that's where we look at using PM focused language and customizing our resumes and our cover letters for each position based on what the job description is looking for. So you're running social media campaigns, led cross-functional marketing projects, coordinating with design, content, sales team, delivering integrated product launch campaigns on time and within budget, is one example. There's a couple more: organize volunteers, manage stakeholder engagement and logistics for community initiatives. This is not fluffing up your resume. This is using the terms and technology that you would use. If you use Smartsheets, if you used Excel, whatever you did, however you did it, Gantt charts. These are things that you can change your focus, and you can talk about in interviews. Helped with website design, coordinated digital transformation project with external vendors, stakeholder engagement, um, budget management. All these things you can take and change the language into your resume. It's really good. One of the things, and there were questions we'll talk about. If you don't understand how to do this, if you just struggle with this, and you're like, I know I did this, I just can't put it to words, mentors are great. If you have local PMI chapter or other project management professionals, most people are very willing to help when you have questions. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So really, this is what it is. It's a mind shift. And it's from doubt to confidence, from starting over to building up. So thinking I'm not a real PM to where you can talk about how you delivered outcomes and you led cross-functional work because that's what a lot of people are afraid of. A lot of my students are afraid of that. I've never done project management. This is scary. And then we go into that question like we did during the icebreaker is what have you ever done a birthday party or have you ever done a dinner party? And you start thinking about stakeholders. Um, what are, stakeholder requirements? You know, are there allergies you need to be worried about? Are there certain, types of foods that people won't eat? What are you going to serve? So not only you thinking about engagement, are you thinking about risk, but you're starting to think about requirements. Uh, how much do I want to spend for this dinner party? There's a budget. How much do you want to when do you are you going to is it a hot dessert, is it a cold dessert, when do you need to put things in the oven, when it's all time management scheduling. So these things you start thinking about and you apply them at work too. If you're putting together a meeting, you start thinking about how do I, when is everybody available? What equipment do I need in the room for this meeting? Are we writing on the whiteboards? Do we need audiovisual equipment? Starting thinking about stakeholder engagement. So these are things that we can apply. Um, so you need to learn everything from scratch. Again, it's not. This is why we're talking about this. This is why we're trying to make sure you understand that these are skills you're most likely already using, and the skills you don't have, those are the ones where you start improving them, or skills you haven't done quite as often. So you have to start remember you have to just I'm almost done with that slide. I just want to reiterate one more time that your confidence, like it says at the bottom, recognize what you're already doing. The imposter syndrome is out there. It's real for every, real life, experienced PMs, certified PMs. So don't get that imposter syndrome. Just remember, if you've done it, don't be afraid to let it be known. Okay. So going forward, there are many ways and we talk about resumes and we talk about the certifications, and sometimes it's like I said, it's those letters after your name that get you further in the door, but it's important that you know how to write the resumes. So like the PMP, it is the gold standard. These things, not only do they show that you've worked towards and accomplished the certifications, but that you're committed to the field. I mean, there are required PDUs to renew every 2 years. There are the number of education hours to and experience to show, like for the PMP, to get that certification. And if you feel like you don't have that enough hours already, then there's the CAP-M, what they call the Certified Associate in Project Management. It's an entry level. It still shows that commitment. It still shows that education. It still shows that you're learning and you're committed to it. Like I said, I have the Agile certification, so Scrum methodologies, it's become very popular. A lot of people want to be Agile, and unless you really understand Agile, it's difficult to say, okay, well, let's be Agile. So understanding Agile is very important for the organizations. There's many other learning paths and many other certifications, program management, portfolio management, there's specialized risk management. Um, so depending on where you're at in your career, there's a lot of paths you can take. LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, there's a lot of ways you can learn it and you can become more comfortable and hopefully get over, that fear of project manager because it's not a scary field. It's pretty exciting, I think, and it's one reason why I enjoy being a teacher because I enjoy a professor because I enjoy helping the next generation of project managers. Okay. So transition roadmap, really, it's like we've been talking about, is looking at the experience that you already have, whether it's in work, personal life, volunteer life, document it, and try to then reframe it using the PM language. Look at it, say, okay, this is what I've done. I had to ensure everybody stayed on track and gave me their work on time to where schedule management, scope management, learning the core framework, study the basic methodologies, waterfall, agile, hybrid approaches. Remember, it, and when we think agile, there's many different ways to be agile. So looking at this and understanding it, looking at the technical skills that you have, again, things that you're already doing and the language you're using, the scope, schedule, cost, quality, and risk, all of these things, um, and looking at what tools do you use to apply these, Project, Jira, Excel, Kanban boards. How do we do it? Look at your local communities, like I said, local PMI chapters, online forums, professional networks. We have quite a few. We have a couple of groups on on LinkedIn that we do at PMO Advisory. Reaching out to these people, if you need a mentor, these are the places to go. And then intentionally target the roles that value your background. If you have the background, you're able to put in that terminology. Um, and sometimes you want to consider moving internally before you go externally. Okay, next slide. Back to you, April.
All right. So, for our key takeaways before we end our topic for today, I guess our key message is this. Know that you're not starting at all from scratch. You're building on a foundation you already have. So that also means that you're not behind. You've just been unrecognized probably until now. Your background may be in media, startups, nonprofits, or academics. There will always be an advantage, and it will always bring unique perspectives that enrich project management. So, we want to leave you with a thought that extends beyond project management frameworks and certification. At its core, project management is really about creating an impact. It's about turning ideas into reality, aligning people around a shared goal, and making change happen. So much of what we do as accidental project managers is about leadership in disguise. It's not just about delivering a scope or managing a budget. It's not it's about navigating uncertainty, motivating teams, and influencing without authority. These are leadership skills that go far beyond project management. They are life skills that makes us better colleagues, better entrepreneurs, and better community members. So I also want you to think about scale. The skills you use to plan a birthday party, organize a fundraiser, coordinate a renovations are the same skills you'll use to launch a product, manage a transformation, or lead a global program. The difference is in the tools, the frameworks, and the scale, but the foundation is the same. Finally, remember this, and I hope everybody gets to remember this, that project management isn't just a career path, it's a way of thinking. It's the ability to bring clarity to chaos, structure to ideas, and execution to vision. And that's a skill set that will only grow in demand in every industries, in every corner of the world. So hopefully, as you leave the summit today, we hope that you get to reflect and ask yourself, what's one project, may it be big or small, that you can start owning differently tomorrow? Because that shift in perspective might just be the start of your formal journey as a recognized project professional. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have a couple minutes for questions. Are there any questions people like to ask? And I think we have addressed all the questions in the Q&A as well as chat. And as a reminder, if you have formal questions, please do put in the Q&A. It's a little bit easier to track and for other people to see. But we do have a couple minutes and just want to see if there are any questions. So I have perhaps a dumb questions, and I often ask myself this question
Question of a
actually.
dumb question. Do you remember?
Well, no. Do you have any regrets actually becoming an accidental project manager
Oh
and
God,
walking down
no.
this path?
I do. I don't. I love the field. Like I said, it's why I enjoy being a professor. I enjoy teaching the next generation of project managers. I'm not going to be around forever. I'm older than I probably look, don't worry. Um, so I'm going to retire, and I do not want to see the field go on the downside. I think it's a necessary field. I see too many organizations, even a client that I'm working with right now, who is that we're doing an agile, and recently decided, oh, let's not do daily stand-ups virtually. Let's do them in the chat. And I'm having to go into the chat every day and say, let's get updates. Um, and so I think during our sprint review on Monday, that's going to be a conversation. So I think it's, again, T, you made a comment. There was even in the beginning, there was like AI in the video. AI does not replace the personal motivation. It doesn't replace the leadership that a project manager or scrum master or whatever the case may be brings. And these are the things. It's important. This is why, you're not going to have a computer that's going to remind you to put it in the chat or to do the daily stand-up. And you can have a pop-up reminder, but it's not going to keep that going. Now, it's a long answer to the short question.
So sounds like he's still enjoying it with no at least anything major regrets. April, how about yourself?
Well, as for me, I don't think, or I wouldn't call them regrets, Steve, but I would say there are lessons I wish I had embraced earlier. Probably as an accidental manager, I often relied on intuition, trial and error. That worked in many cases, but it also meant I had to learn some hard lessons the long way. And if I could go back, probably I would have sought out mentorship, training, and formal methods earlier because they would have saved me a lot of stress and rework. But overall, I guess I really have no regrets, just gratitude because I eventually connected the dots and realized that project management was the discipline I had been practicing all along. So that journey, I think, made me stronger. And I think that's true for many of us who have come into this profession in unconventional ways.
Thank you so much both for that delightful answer. And for those of you in the audience listening to it, you can see there are no major regrets. So that's always good news. We're about 7 minutes to the next presentation. As I promised everyone, we give people time to take a bio break, grab a drink or refill your coffee. So why don't we pause here and we'll resume on the top of the hour at noon Eastern time. Thank you so much.